everyone, this video is just a vocabulary for correlation, in particular linear correlations. So basically, a correlation. In many occasions, variables can be related to each other. For example, age with height, level of education with average income, resistance to wind, and gasoline consumption. So if we were to give 3 other examples, we can do something like year and the mean temperature, or we could say humidity level, with wind speed, student's name or name of student, with height, say. So all of these are examples of correlations between 2 variables. Now, the relation between variables is called correlation, and what we're talking about is linear. So let's talk about some of the things that we're going to use for our vocabulary. So the correlation is characterized by a certain number called the correlation coefficient. We call it R. In case of a perfect positive correlation, the value of R is 1. For perfect negative, the value of R is -1. If there's no correlation, the value of R is 0. So finally, the correlation is in between -1 and 1. All of these are linear. There can be different kinds. For example, you can have logarithmic, if I can spell it. Let's put the M-I-C. Well, I can't spell. So let's write that down. Logarithmic. Exponential. I'm just going to shorthand that. Quadratic, etc. Cubic. Quartic. Quadratic. Let me spell that right. So the full name of R is the Pearson product moment correlation coefficient. All right. Now, so let's look at what we're going to talk about is strong, positive, and negative. So if our correlation coefficient equals, it's in between. So basically we're saying is R is in between 0.75 and 1. We say that there's a strong positive. Correlation. All right, so you're used to seeing it like this. IB writes it like this. So if it's in between or equal to 0.5 and 0.75, we can say that it's a moderate positive. Okay, and so forth. And then on this one, if it's in between 0.25 inclusive to 0.5 exclusive, We call that weak positive correlation. Now, we're getting into negatives here. So if it's in between negative 0.25 and 0.25, and that's exclusive, we say there's no correlation. Remember, that's where you have your zero. The zero means no correlation. And if it's even lower than that, we're going to call it a weak negative. Then we're going to go to moderate negative. And then from negative 1 to negative 0.75, that's a strong negative. Correlation. All right. And finally, we have some graphs. So this is how they are representative. These are called correlations, and these are linear. All right, so strong positive. That means, so strong positive, that means our R is in between 0.75 and 1. So that's for this one. For weak positive, that's going to be R is an element, or R, we can say in this case, is in between 0.25 and 0.5. Now for these, we have no correlation. If there's no correlation, then R, and this is read as an element of, so negative doesn't equal. So that's going to be negative 0.25 and 0.25. I'm going to write that down here. So this is number 3. So for 3, R is in between negative 0.25 and 0.25. And then for this one, we have a weak negative, and a weak negative would be R is an element of negative 0.5 and negative 0.25, and that one's inclusive. And then for 5, we'll just write, this is 5. A strong negative means R is an element of negative 1 to negative 0.75. This is exclusive. This one's inclusive. And that's it. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.